The shelves in the spare room go floor to ceiling. Labeled, organized, dated. He knows exactly what's there. Every caliber, every count, every rotation schedule. His wife has stopped asking about it. His kids have never seen the inside of that room. He adds to it every few months, not because anything has changed, but because something in him requires that it doesn't. He will almost certainly never use most of it, and that fact doesn't bother him the way you'd expect it to. You've met this man. Maybe you are this man. He isn't fearful in any way you'd recognize. He's one of the steadiest people in any room, the one other people instinctively move toward when something goes wrong. The stockpile isn't evidence of panic. It's evidence of something older and more complicated than that. What drives a person to build, maintain, and quietly expand something they fully expect never to need, and what that impulse reveals about the architecture of the human mind, is one of the more honest questions psychology has to offer. Before we can understand the psychology of the man who stockpiles, we need to understand something called Scarcity Mindset Theory, and more importantly, its counterpart. In behavioral economics and psychology, scarcity mindset describes the cognitive state that emerges when resources feel unreliable. When you grow up not knowing whether there will be enough money, stability, predictability, the brain doesn't simply record that as a fact. It rewires around it. The absence of enough becomes an organizing principle. Even after the scarcity is gone, the nervous system keeps running the same subroutine. Secure more, protect what's here, never be caught without. Think of it like a thermostat set 20 degrees too high in a house that's no longer cold. The mechanism was built for conditions that no longer exist. But it runs anyway because it was built to run, and because the cost of running feels much smaller than the cost of it not running when it finally matters. The man with the organized shelves is not irrational. He is operating on deeply rational software written in childhood, optimized for an environment that may have looked nothing like the one he lives in now. And here is what most people miss entirely. The stockpile isn't really about ammunition. It's about the feeling that comes with it. Control isn't always a response to danger. Sometimes it's the only inheritance a man received from a world that gave him very little else. His name is Daniel. He grew up in rural Tennessee, youngest of three, in a house where the electricity got cut twice and the pantry went empty more than once in the same year. His father worked hard and meant well, and still couldn't quite outrun the month. The one constant was his grandfather's farm 2 miles down the road, a man who kept a root cellar packed with preserved food, a workshop full of tools, and a quiet certainty that a prepared man never becomes a desperate one. That certainty passed to Daniel like a language before he had words for it. He's 39 now. He has a good job, a stable home, and shelves that would make his grandfather nod slowly and say nothing, which Daniel understands as the highest form of approval. What Daniel is enacting is what psychologists describe as symbolic self-completion, a theory developed by Robert Wicklund and Peter Gollwitzer that explains how people use external objects and systems to represent and reinforce goals that are central to their identity. The concept works like this. When a goal is important enough to be identity-defining, I am the kind of man who is prepared. The brain registers any gap between where you are and the full realization of that goal as psychological tension. Accumulation becomes the mechanism for resolving that tension. Each addition to the system isn't just a practical act, it's a statement. I am becoming more fully the person I mean to be. And here is what makes that significant. The goal was never really about the shelves. The goal was about becoming someone his family could depend on in a world that had failed to be dependable for him. The shelves are just the language he found for saying it. What makes this fascinating is the degree to which preparedness behavior maps almost perfectly onto what psychologist Julius Kuhl called action orientation versus state orientation. Action-oriented individuals respond to uncertainty by doing something about it. They move toward resolution. They build systems, acquire resources, develop competence. The tension of an uncertain future is metabolized into concrete action, and that action produces genuine psychological relief. State-oriented individuals, by contrast, tend to ruminate. cycling through the uncertainty without converting it into anything. The man who stockpiles is, almost by definition, profoundly action-oriented. His anxiety, and there is anxiety, even if he'd never call it that, doesn't pool. It converts. The worry about an unpredictable future becomes a labeled shelf, a rotation schedule, a system with logic and order, invisible progress. It's a remarkably efficient form of emotional regulation when you think about it. Most therapy costs considerably more and takes considerably longer to produce the same result. What makes this worth sitting with is that the behavior is almost always invisible to the people around him. He doesn't talk about it. He doesn't perform it. He maintains it quietly in a room most people never see, because the point was never to be seen. The point was to be ready. You probably know this feeling. Maybe not in this form, but the impulse to build something, to have something in place, quietly, against the possibility of the worst. That impulse doesn't belong to a type. It belongs to the species. But the shadow exists. It always does. When preparedness becomes the primary source of identity, when the system is no longer in service of the people you love, but has quietly become a substitute for the intimacy that requires more vulnerability than a labeled shelf, something shifts. The room that was built as protection becomes a boundary. The behavior that began as love calcifies into control. The man who wanted to be the one people could depend on becomes slowly someone who is more comfortable alone with his system than present with the people it was meant for. Psychologists call this behavioral rigidity, the point at which an adaptive coping mechanism becomes so well established that it crowds out the flexibility required for genuine connection. The signal when it comes is quiet. It's not dramatic. It's the slow realization that the certainty you've built on the shelves hasn't translated into certainty about anything that matters. Your relationships, your purpose, your ability to sit in a room without running an inventory in your head. The behavior itself is not the problem. The question, the one worth asking honestly, is whether the system is still serving the life, or whether the life has gradually reorganized itself around the system. Both men built the same shelves, only one of them is still free. If you recognize something in what's been described here, the organizing impulse, the quiet certainty that you need more before it's enough, the room that other people have stopped questioning, then you understand something about yourself that most people never articulate clearly. What the stockpile represents at its deepest level is a refusal to be helpless. A decision made early and reinforced over years, that the world's unpredictability would not find you empty-handed. That is not a small thing. That is, in many ways, the foundation of everything a man can offer the people around him. The question worth sitting with is simply this: is what you're building still in the service of the life you want, or has it become the life itself? If this kind of question interests you, the psychology underneath the behavior, without judgment, without agenda, subscribe. This is the channel for exactly that conversation. The shelves are full. The question is what they're protecting.